AI to start. There we go. Perfect. All righty. Good afternoon, and we are thrilled to welcome a leader whose career trajectory perfectly embodies the power of discipline experience and meeting the dynamic business needs and military needs. We have Mr. Brian Murdock here today. Brian is not just a business professional. He's not just a salesman. He's not just a veteran. He is a veteran leader, an accomplished problem solver, and proven mentor. For over 15 years, he has demonstrated the capability of leading cross-functional teams, leveraging a unique blend of skills honed in the U.S. Army and in corporate sales in the medical and pharmaceutical industries. From being a troop commander to regional sales director and his various roles through his distinguished career, he has adapted at logistics, risk management, and strategic marketing. And core focus always constantly been on teaching, coaching, and mentoring others, committed to bringing his role as an officer in the Army Reserve, as well as co-founder of employee resources groups. Today, we are not just talking about a job title. We're not just talking about his experience. We're going to dive into the how and how we translate the tenets of leadership developed in places like Fort Carson, Afghanistan, into business strategies, talent management, corporate growth. Brian, thank you very much for joining us today. We have Brian Murdock, Regional Sales Director for Coloplast. If I'm pronouncing that correctly, I apologize. Brian, thank you very much for joining us today, sir. Greatly appreciate you.
What an introduction. Wow. Thank you.
Well, when
That was nice.
when someone from the Army shows up, I show up 1,000%. So, Brian, you've been here with us before, correct? Or is this
Yes.
your first time? Okay, fantastic. So you know what we're going to do. I tend to do things a little bit differently, but if you have anything you want to present, go right ahead. But first thing I always like to lead off is give us your origin story. How did you become Army officer, and what got you to the path to where you're at today?
Thanks for the opportunity. I don't have anything to present. My origin story is I enlisted in the Army in 2003, right before the invasion in Iraq. I served my first few years in Korea. While I was in Korea, for those of you in the Army, as we like to say back in the day, uh, we uh, we used to compete in soldier boards. Um, I kind of looked at that in my early career as an opportunity to advance and learn and get a little bit of exposure. And as I was going through that process, some folks pulled me to the side and they're like, "Hey, you're doing a great job. Have you thought about becoming an officer?" And so at that time, they would commission you without a college degree. You had to have some college, but you didn't have to have a degree. And so I pursued uh, the commissioning route. I'm a graduate of Officer Candidate School, and then I served as an armor officer for about 7, 8 years, and then decided to completed my troop command, and then got out. And as I was getting out of the Army, I had to kind of figure out, kind of probably where a lot of you folks are at. What's my next career step? Because I know when I'm talking to a group of veterans, they can empathize with the fact that a lot of times in the military, for all intents and purposes, you're kind of on a conveyor belt. Whether you're enlisted or an officer, you know what the next steps are typically. There's some special duties like drill sergeant or recruiting or for officers going to teach ROTC or something like that. But really, if you want to be a battalion commander in the Army, what the track is to get there. When you're out of the Army, um, there's a lot of different routes you can go. A lot of buddies went to work for three-letter agencies. A lot of people stayed in government in general. I wanted to explore the business community, and I signed up with a firm that helped place officers into corporate business. Worked with them. They trained me on how to interview, and I went to a hiring conferences and I interviewed with 8 great companies. And because of the great training that they provided on how to interview and how to articulate your military experience, I was able to advance with all eight of those companies. One company was a little bit unique. They were in the medical device space, and I was really intrigued by the opportunity there, and so that's where I ultimately went, was into the medical device world. It's been a phenomenal experience. There's obviously been some ups and downs. It's really important to take that great first step out of the Army, which I felt that I did. Um, I made some not so great steps along the way, but as I sit here today and talk to you guys, I'm in the best job I've ever had. I'm the happiest professionally I've ever been. I attribute a lot of my success to my time in the military, and it's allowed me to be successful in the civilian world. And I'm happy to be joining you guys. This really means a lot to me to be able to speak to a group of veterans. I think we only have so much time in this world. I'm still an Army reservist. Um, I have a very busy job. I have a family. But this is the type of thing that if I have an opportunity to do to, if I could help just one of you guys, that would mean a lot to me. And I'm open to any questions you guys have about my experience in the corporate world or even my experience in the military.
Well, we already had a hand up, which is the first for me. We're not even 10 minutes in, and someone already had a question. So whoever that was it Demetrius? Would you go ahead and ask your question?
I'm sorry, that was a fat finger as I was trying to log back on. Oh,
Oh, there we go. But why do I know that Tim was going to raise his hand? Tim, go ahead, sir. What do you got?
Hey Brian, thanks for coming to talk with us. So I threw it in the chat, but I'll ask it here as well. So uh, let's talk about those not so great steps that you mentioned a few seconds ago. Any lessons learned that you could share to us about, you know, the things that didn't go as well? Any pitfalls that we should be aware of to think through?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I would start by saying that business school is a blessing and a curse all at the same time. I was part of a very unique program. I don't know if they have other um, masters of business programs similar to this in the U.S., but in LA, USC has a program called the Masters of Business for Veterans. That if you're interested in business school, I would highly encourage you to check that program out. But I went into that program while I was working full time in the medical device industry, and the blessing of it was it really helped me sharpen my skills in terms of a businessman. When I came out of the Army, I was very uncomfortable in the business world in a lot of ways because my whole career was very mission focused. It was all about my soldiers. It was all about the mission. It was about, doing the right thing because the right thing's the right thing to do. Like the way that we are um, raised in the military. And so it took me a little while to feel comfortable having business discussions with doctors. I was still able to do my job, but I wasn't as effective. So I went to business school. I learned a ton. I loved it. I got it. What was the name of the school? University of Southern California. Fight on. And so I went to business school, and it was great. But I came out of business school thinking I had success in sales. I had success in the military. I'm gonna be a CEO one day. All the stuff that it puffs you up to believe. I'm gonna start my own business, and I'm gonna make $1 million. All that stuff. So I kind of took a chance and I got out of the medical device industry. And so if any of you guys have, I'm not so arrogant to think that you guys jumped on my LinkedIn page, but if you did, you will notice there's a little bit of a gap. And the gap
A
is,
lot of people have been stalking you, sir.
and that's okay, but I don't want to act like everybody's going to check out my LinkedIn page like I'm important or anything. I'm not that crazy. But if you did, you might notice there's a gap, and the gap in there is I finished business school, I moved back to my hometown, and I went into the transportation industry, and it was a gigantic flame out. Um, I don't think it was a flame out for me per se from a job competency perspective. There's just a lot of value, and I've seen this as a hiring manager of consistency in employment. So I went to this transportation company. It was nothing like the medical device industry. Um, it was a company that was ran by at some point a bunch of cowboys who had sold the company to some competent people, and then they fired those competent people. And I kind of got caught up in all of that. But I was trying to come back into the medical device industry, and it wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be. Especially since I moved back to my hometown, which is Reno, Nevada, and it's a much smaller market than Los Angeles. And so I had to make some sacrifices. And I was a geo bachelor for a year, living down in Arizona. I eventually found a job, but I had to live away from my family to get back into the industry. And then, there were some missteps along the way in terms of like going to startup companies, leaving a big company, going to a startup, and those kinds of things. And I don't want to fill the whole time talking about it, but I think the lesson learned is, as you're thinking about getting out, and you guys are part of this academy, and you're trying to learn as much as you can. There's going to be a lot of questions, and you're really, and not to make this sound bad, but you're kind of navigating through a minefield, and you just need to be very thoughtful and deliberate in the way that you manage your career and the risks that you take. I ultimately landed on my feet, which is great. But there were some really hard times as I got out of this industry and I got back into this industry, and I went to a big company and I took a risk and I went to a smaller company. It took me a few years after those missteps to get back to where I am now and get my career back on track and to be with a company where I know that I can be here, I can do well, I can continue to grow, I can do the things that I like doing. Um, and so I will, it's highly unlikely that I'll leave this company to take another risk with a startup. Um, just because I personally I don't want to take that risk. Some people I may be a little risk adverse as I'm heading into my mid 40s. But in my mid 30s I was ready for anything.
Thanks, I appreciate it. I think the last portion of that like is helpful, knowing the cultures of, a startup versus a mid-sized company and kind of the risk portfolios there. I think that probably applies to a lot of us. So definitely appreciate you expanding on that.
Yeah, and I just got off the phone about an hour ago with a colleague that I worked with at a company called Boston Scientific. For those of you that are unfamiliar with the medical sales industry, Boston is one of the behemoths. Um, and he was relaying to me kind of the same story that I just told you guys. He left Boston Scientific. He went to some startup companies, and he's absolutely miserable. And I don't tell you guys that because I'm assuming on this call, there's a lot of people that are in different parts of their transition. There's people thinking about different types of things. There's people that don't have as many family obligations, so maybe they can take a risk and hit it big. But he's kind of in a similar situation as I am. He's looking to come back to a big company like I'm at now, and he's had a pretty rough go of it over the last 2.5 years, working for multiple startups that just don't have that management structure um, that you get used to. I mean, there's a reason why the big companies are the big companies. They have a formula, they have a business model, they do things a certain way, and they're very successful at it. They're successful at mergers and acquisitions and bringing in new companies and inculcating them into their business culture, and then they start to thrive where they may have failed if they continued on their own.
Startups are rough, and I come from the SaaS world, so I definitely can respect that for sure. You have a plethora, a giant golf bag, the Tiger Woods golf bag of skills and everything like that. You know, whether it be, you being a military science professor, an XO, everything like that. What specific competency do you think that veterans or people that are transitioning out should really hold on to if they want to get into sales that you think was directly forged because of your Army experience?
There's a lot of things I could say on this, but I'll keep it succinct. Discipline and competition. Um, I still wake up every morning at 4 o'clock in the morning. I don't do that for any sort of pats on the back, but if I get up and get after it every single day, there is um, there's just a track record. If I get up and I get after my priorities and I have a plan every single day, then I am far more successful than if I'm because now that I'm in the civilian world, I have the option. I can sleep. I work from home most days. I could sleep in and just kind of get up and get into it and all that kind of stuff. But for those of us in the military that are used to getting up and doing PT every day, um, getting up and getting focused on the day. There used to be an old expression in the Army, we do more before, 9 o'clock in the morning than most people do all day. If you maintain that discipline, when you get out, you will be successful because most of your peers will not be getting up early. They will not have a plan every day. And and it's so critical, I think, to success in the business world or really any walk of life. It's very challenging for me. Right now, I transitioned out of my professor military science job, and I'm now an OIC of ROTC instructors. I have to get up every day and get an hour to 2 hours of Army work done. I wouldn't be able to do that if I didn't have that discipline to get up and get after things. And then competition. Um, I know that not every branch of service is the same, but my background is primarily in the combat arms world. And there's a culture in the combat arms world of competing and winning because the stakes are so high. So if you keep that competitive edge, especially in the world of sales, and you're willing to outwork your competition and be more disciplined than they are, then you'll win every time.
That's 1000% true. And as someone who spent time in Ranger Bat and came out of SF as a warrant officer, I definitely do appreciate that. Brian, I absolutely do apologize. I'm actually going to be handing this off to my peer, the other Brian on the show, Brian Finger. I just had a family emergency that just popped up, but Brian's going to be taking over for me here. So it was a pleasure. I do apologize. I got to bounce. But I look forward to speaking with you in the future. So, Brian, take it away, sir. Take it home.
Hey, yeah, go take care of business. Hope everything is well.
Yeah,
Uh,
same.
so, Brian, what do you think like the biggest obstacle you've encountered in sales, and for people who are interested in getting into sales, especially in the beginning, what do you think their biggest obstacle they would have to overcome?
Yeah, I'll be transparent with you guys. Getting into this industry is very difficult. I don't say that to discourage anybody on the call. It's just a fact that I've encountered because I've mentored a lot of people to get into this industry, and the question I get from them is like, "Well, how did you get into the industry?" I got to be honest with you guys. I lucked into getting into this industry. I went to a hiring conference, and the first company that I went to work for was there. If they didn't show up to that conference, my career trajectory could be significantly different um, than what it is now. What I will say is um, look for opportunities. Um, I promise you that this is a fulfilling industry um, because there's a lot of ways to make money in the business world. You go into financial services, you work with money, you make money. If making a lot of money is your goal, then maybe look for a different industry. But if you commit to getting into this industry, and again, I'd be happy to talk to anybody who's interested. Just a lesson learned from my last call with this group. If you do want to get on the phone with me, um, message me on LinkedIn and say, I want to get on the phone with you and talk about stuff, because last time I got a lot of connection requests, but nobody really like indicated. So I don't know if like someone says he said on the call that he would talk to me and he never talked to me. No one explicitly said, hey, let's put some time on the calendar. I'd be happy to talk to you guys and share some ideas, because it's a small niche industry. And when hiring managers look at your resume, um, first the AI reader may just throw it out of the system because they're like, this person doesn't have any sales experience. There's a way that you can sort of network your way into the industry, making a lot of connections on LinkedIn and having a message like, hey, I'm transitioning out of the service. This is what I did. I'm transitioning out of the service. I'm learning about different industries. I'd love to have a conversation. And then that helps you make a connection. And then you can ask a question when you're talking to that person and say, hey, is there somebody else that I can talk to? Do you that you think would be beneficial for me to talk to help me learn more about your industry? And then you're making connections. My company has internship programs. We're going to launch a sales internship program working specifically with SkillBridge folks. And so if that's something that you're interested in, hit me up. And as we get that program developed, and if it aligns with your timeline, uh, you can do an internship with our company for up to 6 months through SkillBridge, and you can learn our industry. So there's opportunities like that. Or the easiest way, if you're working with one of the junior military officer recruiting firms, I know that some of them, like Alliance, is open to working with enlisted folks as well. It's kind of a matchmaker. And so you can work through those firms to try to get in front of medical sales companies. Stryker, for example, if you guys know that name, they hire a lot of former military, and there are sort of entry level positions you can get in, and get some experience in the medical device world, and then move on to being a territory manager, and then that's really kind of where you want to be. It's a really good job to have. I was a territory manager for I think about 8 years before I moved into to management. And so, well, I was a territory manager for 8 years total. I moved into my first management job after about 4.5 years. But it's certainly possible. You just have to be willing to stick with it, commit to it, and figure out ways to kind of break in. And I have a lot of ideas for that. And it's just what are you willing to do in order to break into our industry?
And if anyone has any questions, please just go ahead and raise your hand and I'll call on you, or put it in chat and I'll call it out if you don't want to ask it on the camera. One of the things and I'm sure a lot of people on here, as a retired '05 and then trying to, when you get to, especially, I'm Navy, so as an '05 on a ship, you ask for something or you ask a question, you get an answer. In sales, especially in the civilian world, it's different because you're not an '05 anymore, and you ask somebody to whether, hey, whether it's a connect on LinkedIn and they connect and don't answer back, or they just, you prolong that period for a long time. What is the general census for when you reach out to somebody in sales that you're not spamming or just pestering them, where it's just like, man, this guy, and then you just lose them altogether? Is there like a common ground in that aspect of sales?
As far as you guys trying to connect with people in the world of sales,
Yes.
you kind of have to have a salesman's attitude. And what I mean by that is get used to rejection and non-responses. It's something that took me a little bit of time to get used to, being a sales person. But as I like to tell my new reps, we swim in an ocean of no, searching for a yes. And so when I was transitioning off of active duty, um, I signed up for, I'm sure you guys have heard about it, the LinkedIn premium membership that's free for a year for transitioning veterans. I probably reached out to 100 people, and I actually ended up talking to about 20 of them. Because a lot of people, frankly, now that I'm in the reverse kind of position, a lot of people just get busy. And so they may want to help you. They just may, you may catch them at a bad time. They have a lot of other stuff going on and they may not get back to you. But I would just come up with sort of a canned email or a canned in-mail where you could reach out to people on LinkedIn. And it essentially says, hey, this is me. This is a little bit about my background. I'm interested in your industry. And make sure you know what their industry is so it doesn't seem like it's just like a spam email. And I would love, I know you're very busy, but I would love 15 to 20 minutes of your time. Um, Please let me know if you're available to talk. That's what I said to people. Um, and I would say 15 to 20 because it makes it seem like it's a small request. And then sometimes you get on the phone with people and you end up talking to them for 30 minutes or longer because they enjoy the conversation. And really a goal there is like one, I would encourage you guys to look up how to conduct an informational interview. Um, so that you can keep the conversation going and have good questions and really learn something. And then you also want them to kind of feel good about the interaction. I'm just looking at names on the screen here. I talked to Martin, I talked to Michelle, I talked to Joseph. And man, I really enjoyed that conversation. And then you can end the conversation with whoever you're talking to and say, "Hey, is there anybody else that I should talk to learn more about your industry?" I made a stab at trying to work in professional sports. Obviously, it didn't work out for me, but there were people on LinkedIn from professional sports organizations that were willing to talk to me. I talked to somebody from the Redskins. I talked to somebody from the Kansas City Royals that was in there. That was not like a front. I didn't talk to like a general manager or anybody well known or famous, but people that worked on the business side of professional sports. And I just was able to have a conversation with them and learn about like what do they do for the Kansas City Royals? What did they do for? And I know they're not called the Redskins anymore, the Commanders, but that's what they were called at the time. And I just had those conversations, and I learned a little bit about the world of professional sports, and I did that all through LinkedIn when I was in a position that you guys are in.
How did your time in the Army help you succeed in sales and what you're doing now? Like the skills that you learned there. I'm sure persistency is one of them, especially with sales.
Yeah, I kind of alluded to a couple things earlier just about some of those skill sets. One thing that helped me in the world of sales, I don't know if anybody on the call was in during the time when we were heavily deploying to Iraq and Afghanistan. But my first tour in Iraq, I got there at a time, we arrived in December of 2008. And then in January 2009, a security agreement that our government signed took hold, and we had to put the Iraqis in the lead. We really didn't know what that meant at the time, but we just knew that we were going to have to work by, with, and through the local security forces. And so I had to develop deep relationships with my Iraqi counterparts. And then when I went to Afghanistan, I was I was part of what was called an SFAT, a Security Force Assistance Team, and we had to work directly with the Afghans in order to help them take control of their individual area of operation. And so that skill set helped me because I wasn't able to just jump in my Humvees, jump in my tanks, jump in my MRAPs, and go out there and execute operations that I had to influence um, my Iraqi and Afghan counterparts to do missions. And so that's a particular skill set that I learned. Um, and life in the military for me, and I would imagine for a lot of you guys, is chaotic. We do have a lot of structure in the military. We do have a lot of discipline, but we work in a ever-changing environment. And that's kind of the business environment. You know, we have to be adaptable. We have to take charge in the absence of order. We have to be able to develop a vision and have a mission in order to go out there and execute. What I love about the world of sales is it's pretty cut and dry in terms of what I need to execute. I am asked to deliver a certain amount of revenue, and I have to make a strategic plan for my business in order to achieve that revenue goal. And it's very similar to the Army. In the Army, we have a 5 paragraph op order that includes a mission statement and and how we're going to execute it. And we kind of have to do the same thing in sales. You have to have a plan and then work your plan in order to achieve your revenue goals. So those are just a couple. I mean, there's a million things that I learned in the military that I think have helped me in sales, but those are two particularly noteworthy parts of my military career that have helped me be successful in sales.
Nice. Again, anyone has any questions or comments, please go ahead and raise your hand or throw it in chat. Can you talk a little bit about when you got out? And obviously, when you're in service and everyone knows this, they, especially the higher ranking you get, they always talk about your work-life balance. You got to have a work-life balance. You got to do this, you got to do that. Don't answer the phone this time, don't do that or whatever. What was your transition like when you had work-life balance in the Army? That was probably pretty, uneven. And then you get into the civilian side of the world, and it's a whole different type of, especially when you start working, a whole different type of work-life balance, I would assume. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and I'll give you guys a little bit of a disclaimer, and this may be a little bit controversial. I'm not a big fan of work-life balance, just in general, and I'll kind of explain why. Um, when I was in the Army, uh, as a commander, you don't have a work-life balance because in my situation, I had 95 people that depended on me to make certain calls. And and I didn't put my unit above my family, but my family knew sort of the level of responsibility that I had, and that I had to, sometimes I had to leave home because there's things I needed to take care of. I was in command at a time when we were scaling down in Iraq. I had, a lot of mental health issues in my unit at the time. And if I'm sitting home at dinner and I get a call from the hospital that one of my soldiers is there, my family understood I needed to go take care of that kind of stuff. um I think I would cert when I think about work-life balance now in my position, I go back to discipline, and obviously that's a reoccurring theme with me. But my thought process is if I'm disciplined and I'm up and I'm taking care of all my business, then I'm able to structure my day where I can take care of everything I need for my team, everything I need for my region, everything I need to get done with the Army, and then I have family time. And so, it's a little bit controversial for me because um, in the medical device world, we're supporting physicians, and those physicians have needs, and those physicians have patients that may have an issue. So sometimes that may conflict with my work-life balance. So typically, when I have an interview with somebody and I turn it over to them for questions, and the first question they have is work-life balance, it's typically a red flag, because what it makes me think is, are they going to not pick up the phone when one of their doctors is calling because they shut their phone off because they're worried about their work-life balance? I kind of look at it as, what is our job? Our job is to support physicians who are out there supporting patients that have a medical issue. And so we need to be available for them regardless of our own personal situation. I mean, if you're on PTO, then be on vacation. But a lot of us will check our emails on vacation. A lot of us will check text messages, pick up the phone, because if there's an urgent need from a healthcare provider that we can at least pass off to somebody else, we have to at least respond to that, if that makes sense.
That's interesting. As a commander myself, and especially on a ship, and you have 230 something security force people working for you, 4 shifts, and your work life balance is more of a work balance. But there's yeah, that's always a tough one to try and uh, keep a good balance on.
One follow-up to that though is I do think it's important as a leader to model the behavior that we want from our people. And what I mean by that is I've had reps that just, you know, old expression from when I was in the Army, go hard in the paint. They work their butts off, and I've had to tell them, you need to take some time off. You're running yourself into the ground. I do think it's important for commanders to model good behaviors. I think it's good for leaders, who aren't commanders, but just leaders in general to model good behavior. I don't necessarily want to take time off, but I do tell my team that I take a week of vacation every year. I set things in place. I respond if appropriately, but I do intentionally take time off every year to show my people it's okay for you guys to take time off. If you're on a plane on Sunday to support a case on Monday, take off Friday afternoon to get some of that time back. So I'm not, I say that as sort of a personal belief, but I don't put that on my people where if they put in a time off request, I'm not calling them and telling them, hey, you need to be more dedicated to the job. I think it's important for people to have time to reset and recuperate and refocus and recharge and do all those types of things. I try to model that behavior. But also, it's just tough with the responsibilities that you have sometimes to just sit there and kind of worry about your own work-life balance. I probably am not making sense, but this is kind of I have so many people interviewing with me nowadays that are like, that's the first question they have. And it's like the first question you should have is probably like, how can I be very successful in this job? What makes the best people? And not how much time am I going to get off a year? And when I get those types of questions, I just kind of think that people don't have the right focus.
Yeah, maybe not the first question you should get should be that, but yeah, no, it's especially for veterans and guys and gals transitioning. That's nowadays that's embedded into you, like work life balance, time off, and but what you said makes perfect sense. Question from the chat from Olivia is where were there any specific bullets you could take from the Army experience and tailor to a sales resume? For example, working with admin and finance roles, saying how you managed your own company card and travel balance statements could be applicable, like GTC or DTS.
That is a phenomenal question. I love that question because it's a part that people really struggle with. I'm an armor guy. How does it even make sense that I would go into sales? Um, the way that you can, and I wish I had my first resume in front of me and I could read it to you guys because the company I work with really helped out with this. Um, what you can do is show results because sales is all about results. And so I had things on my resume um, about differences that I make. And for those of you that worked in um, an area of the military where um, what was the term? I was on active duty a while ago. It's like the OR rate, like your operational readiness rate of your fleet. I had a fleet of tanks and Humvees, and when I took over command, we had a very low OR rate through a prescribed program that I put in place in conjunction with the other commanders. We were able to increase our OR rate for our cavalry squadron. You can talk about things that make sense to employers, like I had something on there about audits that we did, like a successful audit that we were 98% compliant. What you want to be able to show is the difference that you've been able to make, and then what you did to to make that difference happen? Did you implement a program? Something very simple, all branches of the military, we all do, um, uh, PT and or some sort of fitness. If you're in charge of a unit from a squad size to a platoon size to a company size or higher, you can talk if you implemented a program to increase physical fitness of your unit, and you can attach that to a number. You can put stuff like that on your resume. I think ultimately what employers want to see is that you're a results-driven individual and that you did something to affect a result and you increase the result.
So I think I heard you right. You're a hiring manager now.
Yes. I don't have any openings, but I have a team that I have to hire for. And right before I jumped on this call, I was interviewing a candidate for one of my counterparts in Pennsylvania who's hiring for an associate territory manager position. And so I'm either, when I first got to my team, we were about 50% strength, and I had to hire several people. And then I had my colleagues help me out. And then now I've been kind of returning the favor for the last couple of years. And so I interview a lot of candidates for various positions that we have available at our company.
So every day, somebody it'll be either a DM chat or just in chat. Hey, I'm going to an interview. Wish me luck. I'm going to this interview. Since you just did one and do multiple ones, can you tell the group what obviously without saying who, but can you give us some good and bad of how they did and what you look for, the good, the bad, and the ugly?
Yeah, so I would say that the ugly is that if you ramble,
Hmm.
you're probably gonna lose people. I'm sure everybody through your training on this call has heard of the STAR format.
Anybody?
But we have.
Okay, thank you.
Stories,
There we go.
and put those in a STAR format so that you're able to answer almost any question that comes at you. Um, almost every interview is going to open up with, tell me about yourself, have a good tell me about yourself, and that tell me about yourself shouldn't last longer than 2 or 3 minutes. You want to be succinct. You want to get through that question in a good way that opens up your interviewer to be able to ask other questions off of that. You don't have to go into your entire resume and your entire life story and anything like that. Um, I had one of the horror stories that I share is I asked the opening question, tell me about yourself and your background that is relevant to the position that you're applying for. And I was looking at my watch 26 minutes into a 30-minute interview, texting my boss going, did you interview this person? She's like, yeah, why? I'm like, I'm 26 minutes in and he's still talking. Um, and so, I mean, you don't want to be short with people. The goal of an initial interview really is to make it to the second interview, is to get people to like you. Um, and that may just sound a little bit superficial, but in jobs like my job, the average tenure of a territory manager for my company is about 10 and a half years. So I'm hiring somebody that I may be working with for the next 10 years. And if I don't like them, if they're annoying, and again, this stuff sounds superficial, um, then they're probably not going to move to the next step in the hiring process. And so you want to develop a rapport with people. You want to have succinct answers. You want to provide answers that are clear, again, in the STAR format, so that you can situation, this is what happened. This is what we had to do. These are the actions that I took, and this is the result. And so you're answering their questions in a succinct manner where they're finding value in your answer. an understanding of who you are, and then you're leaving them with a good feeling. Hey, I really enjoyed the conversation with so and so. And here's another technique that I'll tell you guys about for interviewing. I was explaining this to somebody yesterday. Interviews, the way that they're set up, you should be talking theoretically, you should be talking 90% of the time, and they should be talking 10% of the time. So their 10% is going to be an introduction, it's going to be their questions, and it's going to be anything that they feel like they need to get into the interview. You're going to be talking 90% of the time. The closer that you can get to almost parity in that conversation, because people like to talk. Obviously, I'm on here with you guys, I'm talking a lot. But people like to talk. And so the more that you can get your interviewer to talk, the more they're going to come out of that interview and they're going to be like, wow, I really liked Taylor. I'm looking at names here. I really liked Jeffrey. You know, I really liked Brand. What a conversationalist they were. And what you did was you just got them to talk more. And what that shows is like if you have good questions, good follow-up questions, you can take a nugget of something that they said, you looked at their LinkedIn profile and you learned a little bit about them, and you can mix that into the conversation, and then you come out having a great conversation with somebody, you're probably going to move to the next step in the interview process. That was my technique for when I interviewed with people, to the point where I've been called out in the interview. They're like, okay, Brian, we have to ask you a few questions. We're on a timeline here. But I succeeded in my goal because they were doing most of the talking, and they felt good about it when it was over, and I got the nod to move ahead in the interview process.
With for the group, with the time we have left, does anyone want to share with Brian an experience they had with an interview they've done recently or before? If so, go ahead and raise your hand, and I'll call on you. I know I was doing an interview when I was still active duty for my assistant, and we were interviewing like 20 something people, and one of the last questions was, in the next 5 years, at the command, what impact do you see you having in the future? Whatever the exact question was, and the lady went, well, I don't even know what you guys do here. It was like, oh, well, okay, well, thanks for coming. But her resume, it was obviously she went on USA Jobs and just cut and paste an AI to make it look like on paper, like she was it, but she did no research for the command whatsoever. John,
Yeah,
go ahead.
it's critical.
Hey Brian, it's John. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. So my question is more in the interview process. I had one for U.S. Bank a week or two ago. They were asking kind of a technical question for a system that I don't really have a whole lot of expertise in. Do you have
Yeah.
any insight into a better way of answering it? Because I kind of like, specifically they asked for Jira, and coming from the Air Force, we can't really use Jira because of licensing and all this stuff. But I was able to relate some of the concepts of Jira and a Kanban board to answer the question. Ended up not getting the job, but whatever, it's okay.
Yeah, that's tough. I don't have a good answer for that, John. And I've been in those situations. I felt when I went to the hiring conference where the companies were briefed on the value of military, there was sort of this understanding of what you were getting. What you were getting was disciplined people, experienced leaders, people that can get stuff done. And there was a little bit of leeway because they understood we're not going to be able to answer all their questions. I had a family friend set up a sales interview with a technology company, and I blew the interview. They're like, they're like, sell me. You did the research on this product, which I did, and they're like, sell it to me. And I was like, I don't know how to sell.
Like, so it's like, sell me this pen.
Sell me this pen. 100%. That's exactly what it was like. And I was just like very uncomfortable. I mean, at this point, John, I hadn't even been through role plays. Like, I didn't understand the sales process. I just knew that if I was given an opportunity in sales, I could be successful at it. that I felt confident that I had a track record of success in my professional life, and that if you believe in me and what I've done and the potential that I have, and you train me, I'll be successful. I mean, I want to go back to those guys now, not that I hold a grudge, and be like, that scene in Pretty Woman when she walks in with all those bags and she's like, "You guys made a big mistake." I want to be like, "You guys made a big mistake. You could have hired me. You were my first interview, but you wanted to give me the business." Um,
And you
and
get
here
paid
I
on
am this
commission
many
too,
years
I assume,
later,
right?
and I can show you my resume. I've been pretty successful in sales, again, not to sound arrogant, but it's just sort of that feeling that you have if people are like trying to, people ask gotcha questions. And I say that in my interview with people that don't have experience in my business, but I think they have potential based on their resume. I'll say, this is not a gotcha question, but what do you know about our company? This is not a gotcha question, but can you talk me through your sales process? That I try to get them relaxed so that I can at least understand, if are they trying to articulate to me something that I can go like, okay, I understand how you do things, versus sort of like, sell me this pen, sort of thing. I try not to do that with people. And frankly, if you're in those interviews, and remember that interviews are a two-way street. You're trying to get a job with this company, but you're also interviewing them in a sense where, is this a place where I feel that I can be successful? Because the worst thing that you can do is get on with a company that doesn't believe in you and believe in your capabilities, and then you're not successful. Then it's going to kind of burn you out. And then you're going to start to question yourself. You're going to go, should I have even gotten out of the military? I was very successful in service, and now I'm out in the civilian world and they don't give a crap about me. And then you don't feel great about yourself, and you're one of those veterans that regrets your decision to get out. You got to find a good company that's going to support folks like you. And that's something that I've tried to do at Coloplast. When I got to Coloplast, I started a veteran focused employee resource group so that I could educate leaders within the company on the value that veterans bring. I could start a talent pipeline, which is why we became a skill bridge company. I can encourage my peers to give veterans an opportunity to interview, and then I interview with them. And then if the hiring manager has any questions, like, I didn't understand this part of the resume, I can explain that to him and let him know, I think this person is going to be very successful. We need to give them a break on some of the stuff they didn't know, because I promise you we can train them and make them successful at this company.
Nice.
Well, thanks for that, Brian.
Yeah.
I know each company is different with especially job positions and everything, but just so everyone knows, like, the competition that is out there when they apply for any job, really. And again, grain of salt that the number of applicants can be different. What's the average of applicants that you get for a position, or that you've seen in a position, and then the actual number that kind of make it to an interview process? Because from my experience, we had about 100 people apply for this position. We narrowed it down to, I think, the top 20, ultimately down to the top 10 for interviews, and then we picked from that. But what do you see, like, on average? What do you
Yeah.
think the
It
average?
it Brian, it varies, but my buddy called me up and he's like, "Dude, this job posted a week ago. I have 125 people." And there are techniques, and guys, I'll be transparent, and sorry if I mentioned this already, but finding a job sucks. Interview process is not fun. Putting your resume out there and hoping to get a call back is not fun. There are things that you can do, techniques that you can implement. So let's say that you find a job on LinkedIn and you can identify who the hiring manager is. I would go onto LinkedIn and send them an email and say, "Hey, by the way, I applied for this job." Because if there's 125 applicants, I'm going on to Success Factor, which is the program that we use to house our resumes, and I'm going like, oh, I'm not going to be able to look through all these resumes. And so you're kind of like, you're going on there and like, put something that pops at the top of your resume that helps you stand out, because people are just clicking through resumes And what they're doing is they're looking for a reason to dismiss your resume. I hired for an intern in Seattle, and I had 85 resumes, and I would just go on to SuccessFactors and be like, they live too far away. Um, this person doesn't look like somebody I want to work with. And it's really arbitrary, and it's not fun, but it's a reality because there's so many applicants for singular jobs that you got to kind of look for ways to help your resume kind of pop a little bit. That's why networking is so important. Um, Almost every single job I've had since I got in the civilian world, minus the first one that I got, was through networking. I went to that hiring conference. I got that job with a guy named Ed Cunha. I left when I moved back home to Reno and got that job with a transportation company because I met somebody at a fundraiser for my son's high school football team. And then when I wanted to get back in the industry, I reached back out to Ed. And then I got promoted and I reached out to another friend and who I knew that I mentored, and he was working at this company, Profound. I got that job. It wasn't going well at Profound. I reached out to another buddy at another company. He got me that job. So I cannot tell you how important it is to start building your network with really good people so that you can leverage that network. Um, when a job comes up, you call that person. I mentor with American Corporate Partners, if you guys have heard of that organization. My mentee Morgan, a job popped up with my company. She reached out to me and she said, "Hey, can I apply for this job?" And I looked at her resume and I said yes. And so I got her resume to pop to the top for all the applicants that are going for that job. And so you can do stuff like that by building a network and then having somebody on the inside that can help get your resume in front of the right person.
Nice. All right. Well, pending any last second questions, Brian, I really appreciate your time. I know the group does. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to, talk to all these guys and gals that are getting ready to get out of the service and, join the civilian world.
Yeah, I hope it was helpful for everybody. And again, reach out if you want to set some time aside and talk a little bit more.
I don't know if Clay did it or not before he left, and I'm having an issue with my LinkedIn. I don't know what's going on, but can you drop your LinkedIn information in the chat if you haven't already, or if Clay did not?
I don't have my LinkedIn bar. I'll just drop my email in the chat.
Okay, great. Oh, looks like you're in there.
John got it for you for your
Thanks,
LinkedIn.
John.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, yeah, guys, reach out and if you got more questions, ask away. So thanks for your time, Brian.
Thanks, Brian. Have a great one.